So to start off, I'd love to start by hearing from each of you a bit about your career path and a bold move that you made that changed your trajectory that others on the call could learn from. I'll come over to you, Sarah, first on this one.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I'm Sarah MacKinnon, CEO of Delta Q Technologies, as you heard from Erica. So my background is really on the financial side. So I joined Delta Q as a CFO, so into the CFO role, and was in that position for many years, working closely with the founder of Delta Q. And then when he retired or chose to move on, then I made over a bit of time, then I made the move into the CEO role. So, and that for me was a very bold move for who I am. Being a CEO of a company was not something that was ever on my list of where I thought I would go. I always thought I would stay in finance. But I was so proud of the work that Ken, the founder here, had done at Delta Q, and I wanted to see his legacy continue in terms of building a great BC-based company. That I took kind of that personal risk or that personal bold move and moved into the CEO position.
That's excellent. So you kind of leaned into that discomfort and founded this new space for yourself. That's fantastic.
I did, yeah. And yeah, definitely outside of my comfort zone. In terms of some of the learnings that we were chatting about during the prep call, it absolutely, like learning to step into the discomfort, learning to be uncomfortable, and really look at these opportunities as opportunities to learn and develop personally. And so no regrets, despite it being a couple of really challenging years, but no regrets.
Excellent. Thank you. Alex, maybe I'll come over to you next. Can you talk to us a bit about your career path and maybe a bold move that shifted where you landed today?
Sure, thanks. And thank you for having me. So I'm the chief of staff at ThoughtExchange, and that's not a role that I knew what that meant or ever thought that's where I would end up. I started my career in communications and public relations, and then had been working at ThoughtExchange in an HR and people capacity for about 5 or 6 years when the company got to a point where we needed to have a chief of staff to the CEO. And I knew this was a different path than I felt like I had been on, but it felt like an opportunity to learn about managing a business overall and growing my own skills in a sort of more generalist way. So I really feel like following doors when they open, even if they aren't the exact path you were expecting, was a real sort of turning point for me. As I said, I started my role as chief of staff before knowing what that meant. I knew there was a lot of ambiguity and that the learning curve would be really big, and that felt exciting to me. So followed that door and really just tried to believe that I'll learn as I go, which I continue to do every single day, and to really remain open to what I don't know so that I can and learn faster. So that's sort of how I ended up in this ambiguous and generalist role of chief of staff here.
Excellent. Some common themes there. Minda, I would love to hear from you next.
Thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate the invite to participate. It's great to see all these women on screen and look forward to the discussion throughout this hour. So let's see here. I grew up on the US side of the border, and I grew up in Minnesota, and then I transitioned out to LA. I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to the University of Southern California for a doctorate in chemical physics. So I really started out my career on the technical side. And I thought I was just going to continue up that ladder and continue going through on the aerospace and defense side associated with the technical track. I always thought, oh, eventually I'll end up on the CTO maybe in the future. But midway through my career, I got pulled aside. It probably had to do a little bit with me asking a lot of questions of why the heck we're doing certain things in a certain way. And they said, okay, well, maybe you need to start meeting with customers. And so midway through my career, I ended up being asked to let go of my engineer side and move into sales. And so that was the boldest move I've made in my career. I certainly have moved into other types of roles through my role to the Vice President of Geointelligence here at MDA Space. But the boldest move that I made was letting go of my technical and moving into more of a sales role and saying, oh my goodness, I'm super comfortable over here. Don't know what I'm going to do over there, but I'm going to try it for a little bit and see how it goes. And I haven't ever looked back. So it's been great.
That's fantastic. Anne, will the theme continue of moving into discomfort? I would love to hear from you.
100%. So I'm originally from Germany and grew up in a really small town with absolutely no exposure to entrepreneurship. Like if there were entrepreneurs, it was like in the trades area maybe, but otherwise like everybody had their very clear path for their life, kind of going into one job and doing that for the rest of your life. That was kind of the mindset that I grew up around, and kind of initially I did kind of what I was supposed to do. Did like my university education. I have a Master of Science, actually a dual degree in business and civil engineering. Worked for a while in consulting in that real estate context, and then did a bold move, I guess, moving to Canada. And in 2020, which was like a transformative year for pretty much all of us, I guess. We also had welcomed our first baby, and with that got the idea for our product. And then with that time that we, I guess, had on our hands, while everybody was at home, we decided to actually like try making this into a real product and build a business around it. And by the time that I was technically supposed to go back to my old job, we were like, okay, this actually has some legs, and we can really make this into a viable business. So that's obviously almost 6 years ago now. And I don't think we've regretted making that decision, even though it definitely has its ups and downs. But that was definitely like kind of the biggest bold cut. Like the first one, moving to Canada and kind of getting myself out of that environment with a lot of these like mental barriers and these like preconceptions. And then yeah, just kind of allowing ourselves to choose a different path. And I think that non-linear path, that non-traditional path, especially in that baby industry, is a big advantage for us as well.
I think that's all really helpful. Hearing from all of you, it's helpful for people earlier in their careers to know that it's okay if things don't go exactly the way you thought it was going to go, right? It's not necessarily the path you set out on that will land you in the place you need to be at the end of the day. So, thinking about your career paths, maybe we'll talk a bit more about what contributed or played some of the roles in your career success, whether that's mentorship, leaning into your network, some of the support you had from your own company, or maybe something else entirely, and how it made a difference. And Minda, you mentioned earlier getting pulled aside and someone recognizing your abilities and kind of pushing you in a direction. But I'd love to hear from you. What were some of those things that contributed to your success?
So I think, in for all women, I've noticed, especially women leaders and people that excel in their career, we all take a slightly different. It's not usually a linear path. Not to say that it doesn't exist, but it's always a little bit nonlinear as we move forward. So I will say what always drove me in my career was a bit of intellectual curiosity. I was always asking questions. Don't understand why we do it this way. Why don't we think about it this way? Asking questions. And then what I found out kind of early on in my career is if I asked different people, sometimes I got different answers. Sometimes they're the same, but sometimes they were different. And so I found that having multiple mentors, both men and women, really helped me throughout my career. It wasn't just one single individual, though I did have some great mentors that I still keep in touch with today. We still chat as often as we can. But I certainly recognize different points in my career, I needed different mentors to help me along my journey. And it wasn't always a single individual, it was multiple individuals. They all came with their own perspective, and it helped shape and guide me throughout my career. For example, I had one on the technical side. That was really helpful to kind of teach me the ropes. What does it mean to do aerospace engineering? What does it take to build a laser? What does it take to build vacuum chambers? Like, that was wonderful. But then I also had mentors that help me understand the political side of this. This is why maybe you don't ask questions in that meeting with the customer. Maybe you pull aside and you ask questions at a different meeting to somebody else, maybe one-on-one. So I really did appreciate all the different mentors, and some kind of evolved organically, some were assigned. Sometimes I was assigned to be a mentor for others. And so I just think that mentorship, as long as you take advantage both of the folks that come into your career and into your life, as well as being able to turn around and offer mentorship back, is just a critical part of career growth and trajectory throughout my life, at least.
Thank you, Minda. And I'd love to hear from you next about some of those elements that contributed to your success.
I think kind of along that mentorship path, but slightly different. It's just really important to have people around you that understand what you're going through. And that could be like personal and in business, but that like entrepreneurship just puts you in a very unique position where it can feel quite lonely, because there's very few people who can actually relate to where your mind is at. Because my kids are still quite little, so for a lot of our like network, it's all about the kids, and I'm like, I don't have time to make it all about the kids, like try to take care of them, but like it's different. So having that group of entrepreneurs around you that really know what it's like, and especially having female founders around you who also have little kids who can relate on both sides, is really, really important to find that motivation and that drive to keep going. I think we're definitely a bit more early stage than everybody else here, but we've been fortunate to go through a couple of different accelerator programs like Techstars, Next AI, and MIT Sandbox. And from that have built like a really good network of other founders who we can trust and who we can just quickly send a message if you just need to pick somebody's brain or like check your sanity and kind of find that relatability that kind of just keeps you in check.
That's excellent. Thank you. I'll come over to you next, Sarah, for some thoughts. I know you've in the past leaned into the CFO network that we have at BC Tech, and now into our CEO network that we have. But we'd love to hear from you about some of the elements that contributed to your success.
No, for sure. And I mean, there's really a common theme across this whole panel, but I would say a couple of things in addition to what both Anne and Minda mentioned. But building this network of people that you can reach out to is so important. And that those people don't necessarily need to be in your industry, for example. I think it's actually really important to have a more diverse view, because often the problems you're facing are not unique to your industry, and it just gives you a broader perspective. I think that network can be both female and male. I do think as a female, it is nice to have other professional women to reach out to, as I faced kind of different challenges at work. So I think that's really important as well. I also do belong to a CEO peer group through McKay, where CEOs get together and share experiences, and which we can take away and then apply to our own businesses. So I think all of this strong network is just really important. The other thing I would say that we haven't talked about on this call yet, but very relevant for Anne with young kids, and me more so when my daughter was younger, is having a partner that's really supportive and equal and understands. Trying to juggle young children while running a business, whether it's a CFO or a CEO or any number of roles, it's a challenge. It's hard. And so having that support network, whatever that looks like for you, so that you can actually focus when you're at work and not be stressed. Of course, we're all stressed, but just having that support network is also like really important, in addition to your professional network.
It's an excellent point. Thank you, Sarah. Alex, I'll come to you next on this one.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to all of those really great points, but I would sort of reiterate that having champions who speak on your behalf in rooms that you may or may not be in has been really key for me. And so that's building really strong relationships with your colleagues and your networks, as well as having those specific role related mentors that can really accelerate your learning has been invaluable for me as well. And so someone that you can bounce role specific questions and ideas off of, who may have more or different experience than you, I've found hugely beneficial. And then, of course, also being tapped into industry groups like BC Tech. I also belong to a group called the Chief of Staff Network, which is a global Chief of Staff network. Gives you the opportunity to learn from others who are in your industry or related fields and really stay connected with a community, because the more people we can be bouncing ideas off, the better, I think.
Yeah, that's excellent. And yeah, certainly, as I was kind of referencing earlier, BC Tech has a number of C councils that meet throughout the year. So we have a talent council, we have a Scaleup CEO council, CFO council, and many others. And having those kind of private closed door meetings for peers to connect is really, really valuable. Sometimes they call it a support group, but sometimes it's really about sharing what others have gone through that others can learn from so that they don't have to go through the same growing pains themselves. So excellent. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about leadership styles. So I'd love to hear from each of you about how your leadership style has evolved through your career, and what skills you've found to be really effective as the tech landscape itself has evolved around you as well. So, and maybe I'll come to you first if you could share your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I think I find this the toughest question to answer, to be honest. But what I like personally about myself, what I found the most surprising is that I would have always described myself as an introvert, but through this journey, I actually realized that I enjoy going to networking events. I enjoy building that network, meeting new people and figuring out how we can like support one another. I generally try to like find those synergies and find like offer help first, and then I believe there's always help coming at the right moment when you need it. But yeah, like that was probably the most kind of surprising element. I think one crucial skill that is also going to be really crucial moving forward, especially in that AI time, is just problem solving and making things like figuring out what's important and what can wait, and finding pragmatic solutions to iterate fast is kind of, especially when you're like in the early days of building a company, is really important. And that's kind of the mindset that I apply to bringing new people into our team first. Like when they first start, I like to just kind of push them into the water and see how well they can swim, rather than equipping them with all the safety gear. Because we are a small team, and we don't have the capacity to micromanage anyone. So like figuring out fast how well they can solve problems on their own is really important.
That's excellent. I love the help first philosophy. That's fantastic. And I saw Minda nodding a little bit to the second part of that around the AI and the changing landscape. So I'll pass it over to you, Minda, next on this one.
Oh, thank you. So yes, I would also say that on my leadership journey, moving from an individual contributor to being more of a manager, a supervisor to executive management has, kind of evolved my leadership style. And as an individual contributor, my leadership was really around my capability, right? What I brought to the table, my technical expertise, and which was always a great strength of mine as I brought that forward. But as I moved up in my career, and become more and more responsible for larger and larger groups of people and individuals, I find exactly what Anne mentioned is you cannot micromanage everyone. You cannot bring the solution and give the answer to every single problem. You have to empower. And so I view that as being a bit more transformational leadership style, which then enables everyone to solve problems at their own level. I also find that early on in my career, and again, had great mentors, but sometimes the mentors got a little enthusiastic and said, well, you need to speak up more. You can't be as nice as you are, Minda. You got to be a little bit meaner and da, 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 da. And I remember kind of being a bit distracted. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do that, or I'll shift my style. And I noticed that if I move too far away from my authentic self, that's where I got into situations that felt most uncomfortable, and that I look back and go, ooh, maybe I should have made other choices there. So I also recognize that from a leadership style, being authentic to yourself becomes more and more important as you grow throughout your career as well. And so I would just say those two aspects are really an important part of my leadership moving into this role here at MDA Space today.
That's excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Minda. Alex, I'd love to hear from you how your leadership has changed as you move through different roles and where you are today.
Yeah, thanks. And Minda, I really relate to what you were saying as well. And I think sort of where I've gotten to is that it's about bridging a gap. For me, it's about bridging a gap between emotional intelligence and more strategic agility. So I think in the Canadian tech landscape, we've sort of collectively moved from somewhat of a hustle at all costs mentality to a sophisticated, remote first often, and data-driven culture. And I think that being able to build really strong relationships with colleagues and with customers sets us apart no matter what happens in the landscape itself. With AI and technology changing at the rate that it does, humans still trust other humans, and involving to incorporate technology as it changes into our daily work while still having human connection and perspective, I think is really critical as leaders. And I think over the years, I've tried to really pay attention to that and sort of double down on that approach. I think, like you were saying, Minda, leadership to me is about giving people the space to thrive and to really own their work while being a support and a resource where needed. I think often asking colleagues for their proposed approach before just offering a suggestion or a solution yields faster results because it's more collaborative and open, and creates successful projects. I think that it's really then about as a leader being able to ask the right questions to uncover the path to success, not just automatically having the answers, and that really builds trust as well. And trust, I think we know, is sort of the ultimate efficiency tool. So that's kind of what I've been trying to focus on.
I love that. Trust, the ultimate efficiency tool. So true. Sarah, I'd love to get your thoughts on how your leadership style has changed through your career.
I think what's been said already is so relevant, and there's a couple of points that I want to highlight because I do think they're so important. One of them is authenticity. Minda, your experience is very similar to mine. I know we don't know each other, but very serious, very similar in terms of my type of personality. And when it comes down to it, you can't change who you are. So you need to leverage your own self and your own skills when you think about how you want to show up as a leader, and you need to remain true to your own self. And I think that's really important. And I think you can be nice in quotes and be a very effective leader. And then the other point I wanted to highlight was around these relationship building. So whether it's open door policy, always willing to listen, to coach, and to advise, I think those skills and building those relationships are really important. And my last point here, maybe what's changed for me more recently is given the global world that we're in today, is we do need to make decisions much faster, and I don't have as much time for consensus building and as much collaboration as we have had in the past. And so that is one area for me that's changed. And it's not that I'm just going off and independently making decisions, but we've got to move everything along faster. And whether it's because of AI or because of the global market, but so being really clear with our teams about what are we here to do, like what are our strategic objectives, and we have less time to kind of think about what options we have. We have to more quickly make decisions and move forward because these are the times that we're in today. So for me, that's a big change the last couple of years. But everything that I've heard from Anne, Alex, and Minda also really resonates.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'll come to our next question, which is around encouraging, the next generation or supporting women in tech as they advance in their careers. Certainly, it's a part of our priorities at BC Tech to encourage and support a diverse talent to jobs in tech. So I'd love to hear from the panel. What barriers do women in tech still face today, if you believe they do? What initiatives or support systems are in your organization or in the community are you seeing that are helping open doors? I'd really love to get your perspective, and whether that's the mentorship we talked about earlier, or leadership programs that you've seen, or skills building in certain areas that is really useful. Love to get your perspective. So Alex, I'll come over to you first to dive into this one.
Sure, thanks. I think factually, women are still a minority in many rooms that we're in, and there's still challenges to be faced about how we show up. And something that I've noticed in leaders and others around me, both internally and customers and externally, is that it really matters how we speak, and language matters, and having speaking with confidence, even if it's to say, I don't know the answer and I'm looking into that. There's really something that drives respect with sort of showing up, in on your own 2 feet, if you will. And I think at ThoughtExchange, we've made a really conscious effort to try and name this and to try and shift that trend. We have a brilliant team of people leaders on our HR team who are very focused on growing resources and workshops and opportunities for women to learn from each other. And we've had negotiation workshops, we've had leadership workshops for women. We have a Women at ThoughtExchange ERG who meet monthly and share experiences and resources to empower each other. And we're currently working on a more formalized mentorship program as well. So I think it's kind of it's almost like a name it to tame it thing. Like, let's say that this still happens and let's focus on shifting that.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Alex. Sarah, would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the reality is we can't deny that despite it being 2026, this is still the reality of the world in which we live. And I think it's, if anything, it's kind of slid backwards the last couple of years. So that's just a fact. So it is a challenge for all women leaders to lift other women up. And we do some of that at Delta Q, but I think we need to go deeper. And so what I mean by that is myself being a female leader, I think is helpful to have women in senior roles. I also have a female who is our VP of Global Operations, and we have other females in senior positions across the company. And then, of course, we do celebrate the women we have at work with different specific events for women, taking them out to different leadership events for women in the community, as well as hosting some things internally. But that said, when I look at Delta Q, we're an engineering organization. More than 50% of our workforce are engineers. And today, the talent pool just fundamentally isn't there coming out of the schools. And so we have more work to do to start the work there at that level to get more females into these programs. So great first question. It didn't focus on females, but starting right at the root of the problem, I think that still is an issue today, and it's somewhere that we can continue to focus and honestly do much more at Delta Q than what we're doing today. So it's on my list of future things to tackle. Absolutely. So we can try to make a small dent in that and bring more women engineers to our organization.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that, yeah, that showcasing women in tech and in their roles is part of why we're gathered here today too, is to really kind of, show what's possible and show the initiative that we have as individuals and as we work together as an association. And I'll come over to you, and I know you connect with other founders who are women founders and have a great network, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with like I obviously came from an industry that is very male dominated with like real estate and construction, and I've definitely found myself in rooms where that was just uncomfortable. And like, yes, we're definitely not the majority yet, but I think there's definitely a shift in the industry and the perception of women in leadership roles. Like right now in our team, I'm also the only woman on the team, and I would love to hire more women. But as Sarah said, like we're just struggling to find the right candidates coming out of university. Or like more like intermediate roles. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a like silver bullet for it, but I would love to bring on more women to our team. We just haven't found the right path of making that a reality. And then just in general, I think we all talked about that there's no blueprint for your career anymore. There's not that linear path. And I think realizing that for yourself and giving yourself the permission to find your own path and not just kind of try to like follow that like mystical path that doesn't really exist anymore, is really powerful to be like authentic and tailored to your strengths. If you find a room that doesn't appreciate you, it's not your room.
Thank you, Anne. Minda, I'll come over to you to talk a bit more about any initiatives or supports you've seen that are effective in this space.
Absolutely. Well, I think back on some of the different barriers, and certainly, in technology, I think that women can again take on more and more roles and leadership roles within tech. And I don't always see that. I sometimes am the only woman in the room, and it doesn't happen as much, but it definitely barriers still exist. And some of that, it was funny. I came here and I don't know if other people have heard about the statistic where, women, men tend to apply to jobs that they have 50% of the qualifications, but women want to apply when they have 100% of the qualification or at least 90% of the qualifications. And so, showing up and taking a seat at the table is always important too as you grow your career. And so, but it is interesting because I think about the interview process that I have as I bring on a new talent into my organization of around 700. And the questions that I start challenging some of my direct reports when they hire is sometimes around, hey, how people speak and how women tend to speak about their career is sometimes different than how men talk about their career. And so I do try to challenge when I can, when they say, well, she seemed really unsure. And I was like, okay, well, she has all these qualifications in comparison to the guy who sounded really confident, but he had less than 30% of the qualifications. Let's maybe take into account people may speak differently or show up slightly differently to the table. So I certainly appreciate some of those challenges on the hiring side. But I also try to put in place things like, for example, succession planning. I believe that is a key portion, at least where I sit now as named executive officer for my company. I have a direct control over succession planning that happens within my organization. And so I do review my succession planning all the way down to the couple of layers below me to kind of view and say, okay, are we picking and choosing qualified individuals? Do we have a diverse set of qualifications? If not, why? Should we be doing more hiring around that as well? So I think that's something that I do on a personal level. On a more corporate level, I have women in leadership organization. It actually kind of came out of the grassroots. They do a phenomenal job of setting up mentorship programs, bringing in women speakers, talking about giving opportunities for networking, just doing a great job of really keeping folks connected, women connected throughout my organization to really enable and empower us. I think sometimes we don't always do a great job about speaking up for ourselves, but we do an awesome job speaking up for others. And having that network that empower other women to speak up for other women is really powerful. And I've seen a lot of great successes come out of that as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Well, I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and I see we have a few audience questions, so maybe I'll transition to that. I've got a couple here that I'll go to. So I have one here from Ray, and they ask, as a mid-career professional and people leader, I'm often asked how I influence without authority. I'm curious about what some of the most effective influencing strategies that the panel has employed. So thinking if you're not CEO yet, but you're on your path. But curious if anyone on the panel wants to unmute and tackle that question. We'd love to hear from you.
I can start because I talk about that a lot at work because we have a lot of cross-functional teams. And so we have many people that I expect to deliver outcomes, but they don't have a line of authority on an org chart for that team. And for me, that org chart is less relevant. It's about how you show up as a leader. It's about being clear about what you're trying to achieve, rallying the team around you and celebrating your successes together. And I truly believe that you don't need to have those people on an org chart underneath your name in order to achieve those outcomes and to succeed, assuming that you're working together on a common goal. So my advice to you is to not wait to be given that kind of more formal documentation of your role or that authority, but instead to be proactive and to march forward and to just take it on and see if you can move things forward a little bit without having that in place, and instead focusing on relationship building with these peers or other reports and moving initiatives forward by bringing those people along with you.
That's excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else like to chime in?
So I would also say that, it is going to be important to establish these relationships because formal reporting, though, becomes more and more part of your career as you advance. I would say what's even more important is establishing those relationships across with colleagues and establishing those relationships. I think women are uniquely great at. And so I really appreciate the fact that women do a great job of forming relationships and forming those informal connection points and support groups outside of the formal reporting lines that become absolutely critical for your success and empowers you to become more successful on projects that you may not have. To Sarah's point, you don't always have people directly reporting to you. It is about that collaboration piece across functional lines, across business lines that you have to be able to leverage to create that success going forward. So absolutely, I think that is something that is absolutely essential for anybody in their career. And as you advance through your career to really figure out how to create that influence. And it's about establishing those relationships.
Excellent. Thank you, Minda. Maybe I'll move to our next question from our audience. So Mimi asked, speaking of hiring practices, what's everyone's experience in mitigating biases and encouraging candidates that can grow into roles rather than trying to find candidates with proven skills and experience? And we touched on this a little bit already, but maybe, I'm not sure, Alex, if you might want to hop in on this one.
Sure. Yeah. So I think in mitigating biases, the first number one thing that we all have to do is admit that we have them. Nobody is without them. So they exist as you're reading someone's resume or as you're meeting with somebody. And I think that acknowledging those to yourself helps to remove those, or really asking yourself, why does this person stand out as the best candidate, either on paper or in conversation, and really taking into account the feedback from others who have reviewed an application or had a conversation as well, and understanding, where they see this person really bringing something to the table as well, and kind of making a collaborative decision that way. And I think that overall, there's a lot to be said about people who are willing to learn and willing to take on a role without necessarily checking every single box, because there's something in that personality or approach more than personality, that I think does well in tech and in ambiguity and in growing organizations. So those are sort of the top thoughts I have on that.
Thank you. A little bit full circle to our opening question about leaning into areas of discomfort. So who are those people that are going to be able to learn and grow and move into areas they might not have thought were on their path, but where they're going to absolutely shine? Thank you to our audience for your questions. I do have one last one of my own for the panel, and just to close up our chat. Of course, we have our audience here today, some who may be early in their career, or an early stage startup that has big ambitions. I'd like to just come around and hear some of the key takeaways that you might like to share with folks on the line from our session today. Minda, I'll come over to you first.
Sure. So I would say one of the things that I always appreciate is that you never know when opportunities come your way. And sometimes we may not recognize that it's an opportunity, right? So I would say in my career, I've found the ability to prepare, to take advantage and to recognize and take advantage of opportunities that come your way. And they may come in very different forms. Sometimes they show up as failures that turn into opportunities. So I would just encourage people to, when you think about how you want to proceed in your career, take a moment, do the preparation, and know when opportunities come your way, you want to be able to recognize them and take advantage of them.
Excellent. Thank you. Anne, your thoughts?
I think one of the key topics that we talked about is just find your champions, and that either advocate for you or just that help you in your own kind of mindset, stay in the right space. Just having those people you can rely on, that can relate to you, and that give you positive energy, just with whatever challenge you're working through is really important. And adding that sprinkle of discomfort doesn't hurt.
That's excellent. Thank you, Anne. Alex, what are some of the key takeaways you hope that people take away today?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really about build those strong relationships with your colleagues, with your mentors, with people inside and outside your organization, and those stand you in really good stead as you move through your career. And I think that, we're all leaning into the don't be afraid to be uncomfortable, but try things. And if something excites you or really piques your interest, it's likely something that might be fun to follow.
Absolutely. And Sarah, over to you
Oh, I
next.
have to say, I like some of the animation happening on the screen here. Yeah, I wanted to add or highlight a couple of themes that came up today. The first one is I think career growth, development, and leadership today is very nonlinear. And so as you've heard today, being open-minded to the possibility, it doesn't necessarily look like a straight line. And so this is really about being open-minded to what's in front of you and being willing to step into the discomfort as you've heard. And then the other thing we touched on a little bit in terms of employees applying for jobs and whether they have 30% of the criteria or 90%, so females versus males. I think it's fair to say that as women, we're really hard on ourselves and exceptionally hard. And I think sometimes we just need to give ourselves a break. We have many, I'm sure you're all incredible female leaders or developing leaders. And sometimes we just need to stop being so hard on ourselves. Don't give up and continue pushing forward along a path that where you're excited to be, showing up every work and feeling like you're making a difference.
Well, perfect way to end it. Thank you, Sarah. Well, with that, thank you to our panel. Thank you for such an excellent conversation. I was honored to be able to moderate this conversation with 4 exceptional women leaders who I know very well. So thank you for taking your time to share your insights and your stories with our members. For our audience, thank you for being here with us.